Welcome to Dysfunction. Nailed it.
Yes.
Dysfunctional. The 18 and up podcast where we talk about how you want to fuck the other NPCs.
All right.
Woo. Okay. I was unprepared for that. Let's take that again.
Welcome to Dysfictional, the RPG-focused podcast that serenades you like merfolk grasping for air. I'm Randy, the Random Generator.
I'm Tukey, former academic gone rogue, reluctantly here for tonight's topics.
I'm Ginger, professional film industry victim, and excitedly here for tonight's topics.
Oh, that's because you guys just had an orgy. Tukey, how'd that go?
All right, so good session.
That'll do it for this week's podcast.
Yeah. Good night, everyone. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this podcast. And if you did, anyway.
It was quick and unsatisfying.
Or for some people, satisfying. So in this week, we actually had to be more frank, we actually did have sort of an orgy situation, we'll say. More of, is devil kind of related and stuff, where an influence of lustful feelings and everything happened, which gave a good kind of topic of this week of how people feel about those kinds of things in their D&D setting. Anyone want to go first? No? Okay.
Hold on.
Yeah, go ahead, Ginger. Why don't you give us your opinions on this topic?
Okay, sure. So you're asking how people feel about putting sex and sexual related content and situations into their D&D game.
Yeah.
I have never been in a game before where I had the opportunity to participate in so many orgies.
Well, I'm glad I could be your first.
Thanks. Yeah. I did not participate. not for lack of trying on everyone's part, but because I felt that my character, having some PTSD related to those types of things in the past, would be more repulsed than allured by the aura that was happening. But it was hilarious to watch all of the other players decide what to do and do or not do those things.
Yeah, and your characters actually participated in a let's say a sexual act once before. So for me being the DM for the rest of you guys, you were kind of the one who's like, if you did it or didn't do it, you've been the outlier, so you weren't my variable with that.
Yeah.
For everybody else, it was a way to, like Tukey, for example, and other people, it was a way to kind of break you guys out of your shells a little bit. And even me as myself, who, it is that level of uncomfortability that everyone kind of goes through. But at the same time, it either pulls you out a little bit of that or kind of forces you back in, which is a good reason for this topic, because for some people, they didn't want to participate and they kind of backed out. And that's fine. That was a part of the session zeros, that this could have been sort of a thing that could have happened. And for most people, though, surprisingly, they all engaged in one way or another. And that was actually really happy to see, especially two of our more quiet people. They actually took the reins, and that was surprisingly for us in a good way.
It's always the quiet ones.
It's always the quiet ones.
And in all honesty, as much as I'm saying and being reluctant here to talk about it, there's actually a few things I have on this topic. So number one, it honestly was probably one of the funniest sessions we've had in a long time.
For sure.
100%.
Because it was so uncomfortably, oh boy, okay, we're doing this.
Like seeing what everyone could come up with, what their characters were going to do, like just the weird scenarios, like was honestly a lot of fun to see. And then, the second thing too is, I mean, you kind of said that there was obviously a story / campaign reason, right? There was some sort of like devil lust influence going on in this place that we were at. So it was, had a reason for it, right? There was like a story connection to it. And then 3, just getting, we already kind of talked about a little bit, but like how your character would react in that situation. So my character, for example, did kind of jump in, not right away, but sort of the longer they were there, sort of this feeling that kind of, gave into it a little bit more. But my character also has sort of a past where they're sort of very experienced and it's just sort of like business to them in a sense. So, it just sort of, I had to think about, okay, what would they do, right? They wouldn't be shocked by what's going on. They might not jump in right away, but then what happens when they're exposed to this feeling or like subjected to this feeling more and more and more and more? So it was interesting. It was, like I said, probably one of the funniest sessions we've had in a while. And then also interesting from a character study perspective.
Yeah, for a little bit of backstory with it as well, whenever they went into this area, it was, let's say, the equivalent of an aura that created a lustful effect for people. And I intended it as something a little more gradual, where like you kind of get these feelings and then maybe they persist a little longer. They weren't supposed to be like heavy, like, at some point you just had to do it or anything, but it's supposed to be something that would linger no matter what. And some people took that as gradual, that like the longer they were there, the more likely they were to say participate. The whole group there were hundreds and thousands of people there by the end of it. And there was a break room, which there was people that were drinking, eating, but still kind of, making out and stuff like that. But then you got to the literal orgy room where like clothes were mandatory no-go. Like, the fact that they were wearing clothes alone was them standing out to the whole of the group. And actually, so
shoes, shirt, no service.
Exactly. So I love that. And so that was a aspect of it as well. And again, like some people didn't really participate into it, but actually like even our paladin and stuff kind of got the sort of jokey fun out of it and did his own sort of thing. And he was the very straight arrow of the group that I think would be the least likely to participate. And this is notably the second time we've had a aspect like this, where the first time was a brothel. And yes, it was also a bad sort of situation as well for them unknowingly, but the brothel was a different sort of feeling where it was more of a pleasure house and a style of that. Well, this one has been more of a like domination and, choke me harder, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And we talked about, you said my character in game is the only other one who has had any kind of interactions with anyone sexually. She had basically a side fling with the same NPC more than one time. Like she had an ongoing sort of like casual relationship with an NPC in one of the towns that we used to visit. And I actually interpreted that as also part of her decision to not get involved, because I felt like she didn't have a history of just sort of randomly going with whoever to do stuff. She had a history of kind of like picking one person and sticking with them, even if it was like casual, it was still the same person. Like finding someone she was familiar with. So the situation where all these strangers are coming up and like hitting on her, she was like, no thanks. And also there was a big component too. There was an objective, right? We were there to get information. We needed to question these people. And the situation gave so many different ways you could go about doing that. Right. And so my character's way was to remove them from that situation. I took a bunch of them into a demi-plane that was not under the influence of the aura, because I think as a party in general, our immediate first main concern was like, are they being mind controlled? Or like, is this somehow non-consensual in any way? And
you guys are way over prepared for it.
Yeah, and once we confirmed that it wasn't, that they weren't being like charmed or mind controlled or anything, and that this is just like their way of life here and that's how things are, and that they were genuinely like happy, then we were able to sort of explore other options about interacting with them. But I think the whole group in general right off the beginning was just like, we need to make sure these people are not being like mind controlled or or anything first and then go from there. And then after that, it was, anything goes.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, it was, again, for me, kind of played it off that my character was more affected over time. But like you're saying, once we found out, okay, this is just what this is what these people know. Like, this is them. They're fine. Then, like you said, our goal was like, how do you fold it into the goal, right? Again, how would your character use that situation to get information? And that's sort of where I went next with it. Was like, okay, we need information. There's lots of people around. We clearly know what their interests are. Let's use that to get information that we need. And then that was the focus for a bit. I think, again, really for everybody, using the situation, like the kind of, potentially awkward situation, but it's like folding it into what our character's goals were. And then sort of, letting my character slip past that, because then they sort of started experiencing it. And the feeling itself, they're in it for longer and longer and longer. So yeah, then it became more like separate for the character.
Can I just say, there is nothing funnier. I've seen this in more than one campaign, and they've played with this a few times, like on Critical Role and some other big Let's Plays, like I'm sure other people have heard. But there is nothing funnier to me than the bit where the whole party is on the telepathic bond and they're all talking about something, but one of them is in the middle of having sex.
That would be
it's
great.
Just like everybody's like, okay, I've spotted the mark, like we're going, and then your character's just like, yeah, okay, I'll be there in a second.
That didn't happen for us.
There's never yes it did.
Specifically with you.
What? Which character was that? No evidence.
There's never anything funnier to me than like the out of breath answer over the telepathic bond is like, will always be funny to me.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, you were engaged, I suppose.
So sort of the question with this now, you guys were hinted about last week, but when we're full blown of it the following week, what do you guys feel about it? Like, let's say prior and then during even, like, were you really uncomfortable hoping it didn't actually exist and then were pleasantly surprised, or were you kind of no-go from the start? Or were you like, all right, cool, like, challenge accepted?
I honestly spent the whole week in between being like, what would she do? Because there are just so many factors that would influence like my specific character's decisions in this instance. Her history of assault and like all of those things like really played into it. I was like, okay, do we tap into the fact that she has these triggers, right? She has these PTSD triggers. Or do we go like, well, they haven't been triggered in so long. Like, is she feeling over it? Would she want to experiment? Is she like ready to get back out there? And like, so I really thought about it a lot. I kind of just played it down to what happened once we got there. I was kind of like, well, let's just wait and see how it feels. She didn't necessarily like panic or freak out or anything, but I think it was a general sort of like, I don't want to be here feeling for her. But as a player, I was a little sad about it. I was like, man, if she was in a better spot, I would have really tried to like super have fun with you, because like the one-liners alone were killing me. I was laughing so hard the whole time. Like, I wanted to do more, but I just felt like she wouldn't have done more than that. But I was game.
I would say I was probably the other side initially. So I was honestly a bit uncomfortable with it at first. I would say the previous session, how we kind of ended there, I was even having difficulties figuring out, like having my character respond to it. Right. But then, and that was definitely my first reaction to it. But then, like you're saying, Ginger, the week in between the sessions, I was like, well, hold on. How would my character actually be acting in that situation? And how could they use it to...
apart from yourself.
Right. How could what would the character do in that situation, and how would they use it to further their goals, right? And then I started having more fun with it. And then for me, the light bulb moment was when the session started this past week, and it was again just everybody like just nonstop jokes, nonstop laughing about it. Like, I think that was then where I was like, okay, cool, I'm fine with this. And then I actually enjoyed the session quite a lot.
Yeah, like let's just have a good time.
Yeah, and that was just my perspective. But yeah, I mean, I would definitely say, and people who are listening out there as well, I think probably a lot of similar, viewpoints on it, where it might be an uncomfortable topic, and that was my first thought about it as well. But then we got into it. It was pretty fun.
Also, beforehand, we had even talked about, I was like, man, I bet you our two, like, sort of most backseat, like, sort of most quiet players are really going to kill this. Because there are, like, those sleepers, sleeper comics, where, like, they don't say a lot, but then everything they say is so funny. And I was just, like, really hoping they would both, like, really step up and make, just go crazy and make it really funny. And they both killed it. Like, I literally was laughing so hard. I was, like, sore the next day. Like, I was like uncontrollably laughing half the session, which, again, is a good thing about playing remote, because I can just mute that and it doesn't bother anyone. But it was really fun to watch them, like, play in the space and just be really hilarious and have these, like, outlandish reactions to things. And one of the characters in particular was, like, the player was, like, having a great time, but the character was, like, so awkwardly uncomfortable. It was hysterically funny. So yeah, it was fun. It was fun to get to also just sort of be a fly on the wall for that and watch them really come out and, like, hit it out of the park.
Yeah, and I am a person who believes that almost no joke is off limits, depending on how well you know the people and stuff like that as a concept. So for all of my players, I was kind of the same way. I'm like, oh man, like, it feels weird to say something, and then I had one person who sat on a desk and then just spread her legs. That kind of thing. And not that I'm like, oh yeah, I feel real good about this. No, I was also a little bit awkward about it and stuff too. And then the player itself after session, which news to you guys, was more like, hey, that was my first time doing the sex stuff and, like, dealing with that kind of stuff. And you kind of, like, hope I took it okay and stuff like that. I thought he was great. I thought he was fantastic. I thought everyone, like, there was no right way to kind of deal with the situation. It was everyone's their own thing. If they were uncomfortable with it, they should tell me afterwards.
Right.
Or tell me during.
Well, and we had that week in between as well. Like, somebody could have been like, hey, I don't know how I feel about this. Because, like, we didn't just get dumped right in there.
Of course. Yeah.
Either. Like, we had some prep time. So that was helpful too.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, like, the fact that for me in particular, I've known everyone exclusion of one person for at least 5 years. Some people more than 10 years and some people more than 20 years. So I know the people long enough that I know enough of the boundaries to be able to reach, at least, if nothing else, like, they should be comfortable enough by this point to tell me if they weren't happy or wanted to participate in this kind of thing. And for most people, it should be a big part of communication and stuff that they're not happy or want to do this kind of stuff. Just be communicative with your DM, because I'm kind of okay with not being the person who's trying to hit on some of my best friends and stuff. But at the same time, like, for the character, I think it's hilarious to hit on your best friends, because then they're just as uncomfortable. And then let's see, like, especially guys in particular, we'll toe the line. We'll be like, ha, I'm going to kiss you. Ha, no, you won't. And then, like, it kind of gets to the point where, like, some people on the sidelines, like, are you two actually going to kiss? That's kind of a fun thing. And it sort of translates for D&D is, like, how far of a line will you cross before you two are, like, borderline banging. And I thought that was hilarious for Fantasy Grounds. Let's do it. Let's see how this goes.
Yeah, watching you two together was truly an experience.
I'm glad you liked it.
The thing for me too is, like, even though I was, potentially unsure or even slightly uncomfortable before the session, I never once didn't have confidence in the group to play this situation out.
Agreed.
And I knew in my head, I was like, okay, like, worst case scenario, my character is just not super involved, which isn't a huge deal. But I honestly felt more, even if I was somewhat uncomfortable with the situation, I was so comfortable with the group that I was like, nah, like, it'll work out. Like, I never once crossed my mind of messaging you and being like, hey, like, why don't we not go crazy into this? Because I knew, I was like, no, like, we're all going to handle it fine. And then the other thing too, working off of that, is I'm just trying to think back, but none of our characters interacted with each other during this whole thing.
Correct.
Which I kind of feel like helped in this situation. I mean, again, it might be different for different groups.
It would have been really funny to have done that as well, though.
It could have been, but yeah, none of us really did.
Hey, we're still in there.
We are. It could pop up.
We're still in there. I'm just saying.
Have those lustful effects.
Yeah.
We're taking a short rest. Anything could happen.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to also give Tukey a genuine compliment, which I know he's going to hate, which is that
I already hate it.
Yeah, I know you're going to hate it.
You'll
but you did not break character once. You didn't laugh. You didn't you nailed that whole thing really well.
You literally nailed it.
Yeah, and I was very proud of you.
Oh God.
But think about it though, do you think you could have done that a year ago?
Oh, no.
Without
Yeah, no, definitely not.
Yeah, I feel like you, as soon as you were like, okay, I'm going to do something, I was like, all right, nice. It was good.
Yeah, knowing the character helped a lot with that.
Yeah, I think this provided a little more breaking out of the shell, and not just that, but having people be more comfortable with each other for the most part, because that's a big part of D&D is the less you're comfortable with a person, I think the less likely you are to go all out with the character, not just sexual, but being crazy and being say evil or really good against an evil group and things like that, because you feel like that you're going to ruin someone else's fun, or you feel like you're going to step toes or cross boundaries and stuff. So I think that's been an important part of this group, is being a group that is very comfortable with each other and can be almost whatever they want to be and still have fun with everybody. But in terms of a broader scope with that, and in more of a long-term thing rather than just banging each other out, let's kind of dial it back a bit. And how do you guys feel about a little bit of the romance of the group? Let's say you guys didn't participate in, say, sexual stuff with each other, but what if you guys over the course of the campaign kind of built a romance? You guys kind of in for that or not?
Definitely. I think if it is organic and not a forced thing and feels true to the character, yeah, I would be in for it. I'm
kind of on the fence about it. I can see it being very powerful character interaction wise and stuff, but I kind of go back and forth on it myself. Again, pros and cons of it. I think if done incorrectly, it could also be potentially isolating of certain characters from others.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
I also feel like it does have a place, especially assuming that whoever is involved with it is fully on board with it.
Yeah, I think you and me, Tukey, specifically have been a part of a group that they were in a real life relationship. So, of course, it was a little bit more awkward when they're kind of being in a relationship in game, but we know they're doing it in real life. So it's kind of almost a fanfic that they're kind of participating in. But at the same time, I had one of my characters actually try to kiss one of the characters that those two people are in a relationship with. And, she took it as a joke and stuff like that, kind of slapped me and had that kind of fun aspect of it and messaged me about having loving the character and things like that. And so I felt more comfortable with it from there, because it's also very awkward to try to romance a character that is legitimately in a relationship with another person. And even in this campaign that we're dealing with, we have at least two people that are in a relationship with each other. So romancing either of them is kind of awkward, especially me being a guy romancing a girl while their boyfriend is still there is really weird, but neither of them think that I'm literally trying to hit on them. So I feel much more relaxed with that, especially that being one of my longest friends ever. He would probably never feel that way, but that's not it for everybody. Some people would feel really awkward watching a guy hit on their girlfriend or watching a girl hit on their boyfriend and things like that. And that can be a very awkward moment for a lot of people. And especially for you guys as players trying to do it, it's this fine line of trying to not be I'm not trying to take your woman. I'm just being a character that's having fun, but your character isn't trying to hit on the woman, but my character is kind of that womanizer and thus doing the thing he kind of does. Again, this group is really comfortable with that, and I feel like anyone can hit on anybody and it'll be perfectly fine, but not every group is the same.
It's actually funny that you mentioned that. But one of the two who is in the couple in this current group did technically flirt with my character at one point.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But more so in a way that's just how their character interacts with other people, and it was also hilarious. So it did happen. But I think man, group dynamic. I mean, so for all the topics we've talked about tonight, group dynamic can make such a big difference. And then, how does your character even respond to in-game romance, right? Like, again, there could be differences. Maybe I'm not comfortable with it, but what would my character do? Or maybe I play my personal preferences into the character's preferences too. Definitely a lot of decisions and possible directions you can go with something like this.
Yeah, I think going back to what you said about like having known people for a long time and like knowing that their partner's right there and things like that, it's been funny for me this campaign because obviously Randy, you and I have had intense character interactions as it went along.
For sure.
And of course, I've known your partner and we're very good friends for like 10 years at least, 11 years, something like that. And so, yeah, it is something that crosses your mind where you're like, huh, but it didn't cross my mind more than to be like, huh, that's funny. Like, because I know that she would just be like, oh yeah, I heard about that. Like, she wouldn't care about it at all. But yeah, it is definitely interesting when it's almost like easier when you're in a group of people you don't know at all, right? Like if you were in a random Roll20 group on the internet and you wanted to try something out, you could just throw it at whoever and see what happens. If it didn't work out, you'd be like, all right, whatever, on to my next group next week. Like it wouldn't matter.
Peace.
Yeah. But in an established group, it's like, yeah, you have to know like what the dynamics are, what everybody's okay with. And again, to me, the most important thing is it organic? Like, does it make sense?
Agreed.
Has it been building up? Has it always been there? Was it there from the beginning? Did like an incident trigger it? Or like,
are you a bard?
Right.
Yeah. Are you a bard? Or did you just wake up one morning and go, I decided I want to have a girlfriend in the game and like make a decision that really doesn't make sense in context of like their experiences. In the story, for the purposes of the story, it's also perfectly fine if that relationship ends up being like one-sided or unrequited or whatever. Like that's also a possibility of things that happen when like one character decides they like another character. It doesn't always have to actually become a romance, but you could still play that tension out if that's what you feel like your character is feeling.
Will they, won't they?
Will they, won't they? A lot of shows, a lot of TV shows and stuff have gotten canceled almost immediately after getting the two main characters together because all of the tension is gone and suddenly it's not a fun show anymore.
Frodo and Sam. I know what you mean.
Wait a minute.
Sometimes the tension is the fun part. Specifically, a really good example of that is like Castle. I don't know if you ever watched Castle, but for years they were like, oh, are they going to get together? Are they going to get together? And as soon as they got together, like the show just fell apart. Like everybody was like, we don't like it anymore. And they canceled it. So sometimes you're relying on that tension to keep the drama up,
Yeah, and I've my sort of persona has luckily been the kind of person that no joke kind of off limits, and I do have those limits, but they're very rare, and I love doing the sort of shock value of a joke. So me doing these sort of outlandish things and the sort of sexual and stuff like that has been something that is shocking, but it's not out of the ordinary for me. So it's much more, oh, that's just Randy, rather than like this person who's trying to hit on my girlfriend or something like that. And I feel like for me, that's been a sort of benefit to being the DM, is that even though they're crazy and saying things that I say sometimes, it still feels like it's just me saying something rather than me being so out of character or suddenly like hitting on someone or, hey, I'm trying to get a girlfriend in D&D, so I'm going to start hitting on this person, but this person's potentially taken or not interested, and then that all ends up being a different kind of headache for the group sometimes.
That's just because you refuse to use accents ever, so it always just sounds like you.
He comes up with excuses.
I don't want to do accents.
The one time I was ever truly uncomfortable for our entire campaign was when I did Alter Self to be one of our other characters, and I had to do his accent for like 1 second. I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
It was very hard.
It was funny though.
Orgy room, no problem. Someone else's accent.
Again, I think this topic, even the first one, it really comes down to what's the motivation behind it. I mean, if for a romance, if there's a reason your character would do that or would feel that way about another character and it makes sense, it's like organic, it's like seems fitting, right? Like it seems like, okay, like let it see if it develops as stuff is going on during the campaign or not, or fine. Again, maybe your character would just be avertant to it. Like, I mean, I'll use the example of our characters, right? in this current campaign. Mine, for example, is not romance wise, but like just not physically interactive. And they've always been like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember there was the moment where I think your character got promoted. I can give you the promotion or something like that. Got promoted in the guild, and could have been the moment where like the two people hugged and was like, cool, congratulations. And I think you extended your hand for a handshake, and I just slapped it like a low 5.
Yeah.
And then just awkwardly
away.
It was like, carry on, walk away. So, there's tons of different ways to play it. And I think it can really make sense with what your character would do.
And I actually had to face step and cut you off from leaving just to try to get the handshake. You were awkwardly scuttling away already. So
yeah, no, because my character, very established from the beginning, is just not super like emotionally connected with their emotions, connected like physically with others. So like that's how I played it. So it was like sort of avertant to this stuff.
Run away right now.
Right. Like what is this? I don't like it. I'm out of here.
And my character doesn't let you get away with that. So they're very different. And my character is pretty obnoxious about being the total polar opposite of you.
Yeah.
So how do you guys make decisions this way anyway?
I mean, it really just, like I said, depends on what's happening. I very rarely pre-make a decision for Domino. I feel like she kind of makes her own decisions in the moment. And then I can look back later at the decisions over time and see the progression of them and like what caused them. But I've never really come across a scenario where I did something and then I went, oh, that didn't make sense for her to do.
For me, for decisions, it changes throughout the campaign. So, because I think, for me, I tend to develop my character a lot as the campaign is going on. So early on might be a little bit more of me having to really think, okay, what would the character do? And then solidifying that as the character as the campaign goes on. But then, as you get later into the campaign, especially now, it's like, if I have to make split-second decisions with this character, I can easily do that. It's very, very easy to get in that mindset, know how they're going to handle situations without any, like you said, Ginger, without any like pre-thinking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of that is just because of the length of time we've had with them.
Personally, whenever I created characters and stuff like that, I think a thing that helps with decisions is going by the personality traits first and foremost. Almost like being a lawful character, but not having to be lawful. Because then you have at least, if something's outlandish as something like romance or sex and stuff like that kind of comes into play, then what your alignments and everything kind of sort of suggests, you can kind of fall back to it a little bit. Even alignment's a good example to fall back to it. And then go from there, because I've had characters that are chaotic, but they're grounded with something that they're chaotic with. They're either selfish or they're self-serving or they want more power, something like that, versus having this person that every decision is this, oh, I really need to think about it. And then it doesn't feel like it's your character. It feels like you're trying to make up a story with your character, but you need time each and every time. So I try to narrow it down based off of the lawfulness. Like being a lawful character is actually really easy, I think, because as annoying as it can be for party members and stuff, it's really simple to make decisions because you have this, for lack of a better word, code. And if that doesn't abide by your code, then you're sticking to it, except for varying examples. Like, again, our lawful paladin didn't like full on participate in, say, an orgy, but like still kind of adapted with some of the lustfulness and, maybe choked a person out or two with his newfound strength that he acquired from a weapon. So he still had a little bit of fun with it.
It's funny that you mentioned specifically like agonizing over decisions, because I don't pre-think any of Domino's decisions, but Domino herself is an overthinker. So I just realized it could come out the same way at the end of the day in the game, and people might think that's just me overthinking. But she was designed to be a character caught between two deities and caught between two worlds and two paths and she was always going to be.
And thanks to me, 3.
Yeah, now 3 things. Yeah, thanks for that. So she was always designed to be that way, like trapped in this sort of like indecision, and part of her development is that I've been trying to get her out of that, which has been at times more successful than other times. But myself as a player, I have things that I would have loved to do with her that I felt like didn't make sense for her based on what was happening. So like my decisions don't always equal like what she ends up going with, but I think her overthinking is just like sort of a part of her situation and her personality traits at this point. I can't really do a whole lot about it every time. Every now and then when stuff gets really real, she stops overthinking and goes and kills things. But
I mean, I definitely feel like I'm in a similar spot as you at this point in the campaign, right? But I think, like Rennie, you're bringing up the character sheet, right? For me, again, a lot of that, alignment, all of that stuff, like in the very beginning parts, I'm probably looking at that more and using that to guide the decisions. But yeah, I mean, later on, it's honestly almost reversed for me now. It's kind of like now I know what my character's decisions would already be. And then sometimes I almost have to look back at the character sheet and be like, wait, does this still make sense? Should they have this flaw? Or should that be a different flaw now that all this stuff has happened to them throughout the campaign? Or like, hey, this is where their alignment was to start. Like, does that still make sense now? Here's their background. Does that make sense? So it's like almost reversed for me. It's like, early in campaign, that's guiding my decisions. And now it's like, no, my decisions are almost guiding that kind of stuff instead. And I actually feel like, so, Ginger, you're just talking about how your character's a thinker, or would like to think about things before they act. And my character's not, which is the opposite of me. So
yeah,
I think is kind of funny sometimes to react so quickly to things in this character versus like me as a person would probably not do that.
Yeah, in real life, I am incredibly decisive. So it's kind of like people are like, oh, she's really thinking about, like, her character is really overthinking things. Like, she's probably really thinking about it. It's like, no, Ginger wouldn't do that. Like, in real life, I'm incredibly decisive. And it's been actually interesting and kind of fun for me to play a character that has to overthink.
And Tuki, for you, not that like your character is a right or wrong aspect, but like personally, I think that is a great way of having a character as someone who has a very strict thing in the beginning. Like it's the start of your character. You should have this aspect of like what your character is, what they've gone through to create this style of a character. And then over the course of time, not that it should evolve, but it should develop. Like, does it evolve more? Does it degrade? Does it improve even? And you could be from a neutral character to a good character. You could be from a good character to an evil character. Like, that's the point of the campaign, is not to be the stagnant character that has these beliefs and that's it throughout. Like, these beliefs should be challenged. And do you hold on to those beliefs and rise above them? Or do you acknowledge the fact that your beliefs are flawed and potentially grow above those beliefs? Or even that you find those beliefs to be this like wrong aspect of your character and you even devolve to this evil person who abolishes any sort of those beliefs and just thinks beliefs and gods in general are dumb, and you just totally go off the rails at that point.
Yeah, what do you do when a god insults you right to your face?
Oh, yeah, wouldn't know what that's about. I mean, it's such a balance, right? And again, not right or wrong answers, right? But, I know, again, just speaking from my character perspectives of what's currently going on, it's like, definitely very different, in a way different place now than they were at the start of the campaign. But at the same point, I've tried to make sure that their actions still feel consistent with that character, right? We've even joked about this, I think, in previous sessions, where it's like, my character will make some of the same mistakes that they made early on, but it's like that makes sense, right? Like no matter how much a person changes, they still are sort of where that person they started as, right? So having some consistency there while also changing them, and yeah, again, it's all finding the balance. And I think a lot of it will depend on what the character goes through in the campaign. Is everyone skipping along and having, fun laughs for a year worth of time in the game, or are they being beat down and constantly facing crazy situations? And, it really depends. Yeah, definitely tricky.
We've talked a lot about the outside influences, right, in the campaign that are having an effect on all of our characters. Like if you took those influences away, the interactions between the characters becomes very different, right?
Easily.
Mm-hmm.
For example, if you were happily married for a really long time and all of a sudden like your partner character became like super abusive in real life, you'd be like, okay, I'm out. But in D&D, what if they're possessed?
Or mind controlled.
What if they're being controlled?
Yep. Charmed.
What if they, what if something, like there are other things that play into those interactions. And so there's like multiple outside influences involved, exerting influence on our party right now. I have at least 3 that are just mine, and I'm only one character in the party, and like everyone has all these influences around them. So it's like if it was just us, like just the party members, and we had no influences, and like, we were just like going around town protecting people's livestock, then it would be a very different vibe, but you have to, when you think about those relationships, you have to also consider like, who is this relationship with? Are they whole? Are they sane? Are they rational? Are they being manipulated? So a relationship you may or may not stick with in real life is not necessarily the same scenario. And it also depends on your class, how you respond to that. Like, I'm the only cleric, so I respond to those things very differently than, say, like the other rogue would respond to them.
Yeah, and actually, like I said in the start of this, that when it comes to the brothel, there are NPCs that may have been mind controlled into doing the things that they're doing. And that's a whole different aspect that IRL, you kind of make the joke that, oh, I just fell into them and stuff like that. But in D&D, they honestly kind of could have, or like, I don't know, I had a dream for like a day or a month or something. And then all of a sudden I woke up and I ran back to you and stuff, but they don't believe that. There's this whole aspect to it with magic and like outside effects that suddenly make the normal scenario of a relationship just kind of blow up, honestly, and make it to where like, man, what do you do about that? Because like your body did the thing, but your mind didn't do the thing. And that's a whole nother thing to kind of bring up with that versus in real life where it's like, nah, you know what you did. Don't try that.
Yeah, the devil made me do it works a lot better in D&D land.
Exactly, because he literally made you do it. Probably, maybe, I don't know.
Or you asked him to do it for you.
True. That's all. And see, that's another thing that you did do it intentionally, but the devil still kind of made you do it.
Uh-huh.
Ooh, see,
now you're giving him ideas.
Oh yeah, that's a good aspect for another time.
Oh boy.
See, but I need a group of people to be in a relationship in the campaign to do that, because none of you are together.
I mean, man, again with decisions, yeah, it's the outside influences we're talking about. Character knowledge, I think, is a big one too, because it's like, what would your character know in situations that would change how they would decide things? I think, Ginger, you were just talking about like, being a cleric, you might know if someone is under some other influence versus a rogue might not. And a rogue might just be like, how do I solve my problems? Typically stabbing things. So yeah, I mean, there's so many different aspects. And then again, because we're in a world of magic, there's a lot of ways you can go with it.
Also just timing, sometimes you're on a good path and everyone's doing good for 2 seconds and you walk away for 2 seconds and the DM decides to go behind your back and ruin everything before you come back from your break that you were taking.
Don't blame me.
Wow. Calling out our benevolent and kind and super talented DM.
See.
Sometimes you're just out in the desert having a chat and it doesn't take long enough and then it changes the whole campaign and you had no idea.
Yeah, because you threatened the species that they happen to be, but you didn't know that.
Exactly.
And then you guys later on try to get downtime and then choose to go do this random thing that ends up being really not random and part of the main story. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I really wish we took a week of downtime. We had no reason not to. See, decisions. Why didn't our characters make this decision?
We're dumb.
You guys aren't dumb. You're just doing what your characters are trying to do.
We're enthusiastic. We're trying to move on to the next. We're trying not to get all stuck in side quests like I am in my video game right now and just move to the next part of the actual story,
Nothing is a side quest.
See, and for everyone else, like they were given years of time. Basically, they knew that this was going to be a years-long campaign, not IRL, but more in the setting itself. And ever since the time skip, they think that everything is very like, we need to do this now. And then they were about to take down time and they're like, we could just check this thing out real quick. Like, why not? And now they've gotten into part of the main quest.
Guess what, though?
We have dates. Yeah.
But everything is now.
Yeah, now everything is now. Good job. You should have had the 3 years of downtime.
Well, I didn't get a choice about that.
Okay, maybe not you, but everyone else.
See, now our characters' decisions are being heavily influenced by time. Every day is precious at this point, but is it?
Yeah.
It probably is.
Yes. I'm going back to the time skip demi-plane. I'm just going to spend like a day there. Y'all got this, right? I'll see you next year if you all live.
I mean, a day there is like a week. Oh, no, a day there is probably like a year. I don't remember what that was now.
Yeah, it's like 1 month per hour. I'm just going to go hide out there for like
Something
a couple
like
of
that.
hours. Like, you guys got this.
It's the opposite of the hyperbolic time chamber, and we really need to find a demi-plane that is like the hyperbolic time chamber, because we need some more time.
Yeah, we do need more time. We need more time, Randy. Randy, give us more time.
Are you guys done?
Don't. Oh, God, what have you
No.
What have you done?
No, seriously. Are you guys done?
Done with what?
Oh, no.
No. Are you done?
No.
We need more.
Let's just go to a flash round
Nope.
then.
Wait. This is the Flash Round, where we take turns creating the bones of a character that anyone can use. If you play one, let us know who they become. All right, let's roll initiative. 19.
3.
You guys can go first.
What'd you get?
I don't want to say.
Randy.
I got a 1.
Yeah, it was a 1.
It was the one.
Just go.
For the race, it's going to be a goblin.
What are you buying?
What are you buying? Oh, I finally get to pick a class. Okay. For a goblin, barbarian.
Goblin barbarian. He's gotta be I don't know. I kind of like the idea of wild magic barbarian. Just emitting the chaos.
Oh, you threw me off big time there. But you know what? I'm still going with it in my head here for, let's say, for appearance. Yeah, he's a barbarian. He's jacked, right? Like medium height, jacked. He's got like ears, kind of some cuts on him, but probably could get him healed, but just never wanted to.
Biceps as big as his thighs.
Yeah. Oh no, totally. And then let's say he's got 2 earrings on the left ear.
Nice. Who's his stylist?
Himself.
Oh. For background, he's going to be a folk hero.
For the personality trait, he doesn't want to talk about it.
Is he friends with Doldrug?
Easy. Yeah. Sorry. He doesn't want to talk about it.
Ah, right.
Mm.
For ideals, we're going to go with style. The best part of battle is making it look good.
Ooh. All right. For bonds, I'm going to do a little bit of a quirk in the bond as well. His absolute most loyal best friend that he's known his whole life and he would just do anything to protect is his pet rock.
His flaw is that he feels like he will never find a better companion for his pet rock.
Aww.
Oh, wait, does that include himself?
Yeah, he's so worried that he's not good enough for him, and that so he's just trying to find it, and it just doesn't happen.
He just wants him to be happy.
His item then is going to be a really nice looking comb, but it's not for him. It's for the pet rock.
Does it have like moss hair?
I was gonna say that too.
It's like a scrub brush looking comb.
His name is going to be Lugresh. Lugresh.
Wait. What's the rock's name?
Wilson.
Wilson.
What are you buying, Wilson? I'll get you anything.
Well, just make sure you don't lose that pet rock out there.
Hey, you made it to the end. Well, if you enjoyed this session and want to hear more, you can find us on X, formerly known as Twitter, at dysfictionalpod for our latest updates and downloads.
Original music for this podcast is provided by Joshua Silver, the artist known as Demonon, on Spotify.
As we end off for this week, remember that what happens in Vegas always stays in Vegas. Unless your partner has legend lore. Be careful.